You wondering who will be diving into the stuffing less than 2 times? Or who will be eating more than 3 pieces of pie on Thanksgiving? Well, then you got to play the Pick 6 game from DraftKings. Your shot to turn a little cash into a lot. It's super simple to get started. First, download the DraftKings Pick 6 app, now available in Texas, California, and more. Then select between 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less than a certain stats, like yards or touchdowns, sacks, whatever. You choose if they're going to have more or less. And for the first time, Pick 6 players, check this out. New customers play $5. You get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use the code BALLERS. That's the code BALLERS for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus bets awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 30 days. Limited time offers. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
This episode is brought to you by Instagram. Though we can't all agree on our picks, we can all agree that we want social media to be a safe place for teens. So it's good to hear about Instagram teen accounts, which provide automatic safety settings for teens built with parents' top concerns in mind. Things like making their teens' profiles private by default, having automatic contact limits so they can only be messaged by people they are connected to, and content restrictions that place them in the most restrictive setting, limiting sensitive content they see in places like Explore and Reels. And all of these settings are built in, so no extra work for parents. Instagram is automatically placing teens into teen accounts, and teens under 16 will need a parent's permission to change any of these settings to be less strict. Basically, Instagram teen accounts will limit who can contact teens and the content they see and help ensure teens' time on the app is well spent. And that's something everyone can agree on.
The DFS Studio is brought to you by DraftKings. Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast with your hosts, Kyle Borganoni and Matthew Betz.
Welcome on back. It's Friday, December 13th, here on the Fantasy Footballers DFS and Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni from Georgia, and I'm joined, as always, by Matthew, your way up south, Yankee Betz.
You sound like a Georgia boy, that's for sure. I don't even know what that was that just happened. Were you going for like an Xavier Legette impersonation there, or what was that?
I can't get down that much. My voice does not go to Farmer Fran levels of where, like, let me just start off by saying this. I'm born and raised in Georgia. My family's from the South, family in Tennessee, Mississippi, Georgia. And some people hear in my voice, maybe you do, Betz. You hear me throughout some y'alls and some other Southernisms.
Fixin'.
But compared to some other people and people listening to this podcast, I mean, my aunt thinks that I'm from Boston compared to the way that other people sound.
Yeah, you don't sound like if I just like met you randomly on the street, I wouldn't be like, oh, he's definitely from the South. But you let your little twang come out, every now and then, or you throw out, when I was fixing to move from Georgia to Arizona. You have a couple things here and there, but yeah, nothing crazy. So you're like a fake Southerner.
I'm not Legette. I don't hunt raccoons. I will tell you that right now. I'm from the burbs, and so maybe that just already disqualifies me. And there's people out there saying, "Oh, this guy's just a has-been. He's a never was. He's not really from here." But yeah, I mean, my voice comes out every once in a while, but I do have a voice that is engaging. I mean, you've at least stayed with me for years on the podcast, so I haven't driven you away.
Not yet. I mean, it does help that I'm contractually obligated to be here. That keeps me coming back each week. But yeah, man, it's good. And I think a lot of people, when you took over hosting this show, the Dynasty show, people seem to like you in the host role. So whatever you're doing, Kyle, it's working.
I've played point guard. I've been quarterback. I played shortstop. I get the role. Like I have that dog in me, and more importantly, I now have a dog in the family.
Yeah, big news. You should share that with the people.
Yeah, I'm a changed man. Okay, if you guys don't know, I'm a little bit stubborn and contrarian. It's the way that I've always been.
No, you don't say.
It's very easy for me when I get presented a new opportunity. I have friends that are the exact opposite of me. When I get a new opportunity, my first gut reaction is, I don't need this in my life. I don't need to add anything else in my life. I want to hold on to what I already have. And so when we got presented with an opportunity to get a dog, it's an Aussie Doo. An Aussie Doo is the
Aussie
kind of.
Doo.
Yeah, my friend says it looks like a Muppet dog.
Kind of. I mean, I've seen the pictures. It kind of does.
Yeah. This dog's name is Ozzy, named after a couple different things, but Ozzy Albies of the Braves. But Betz, you've been a dog owner for a while, so any tips for me? I had dogs growing up, but it's been a while since I've been married. We haven't had a dog.
No major tips. I will just say that, I tell my dog every night before bed how much he means to me, how much I love him. And quite frankly, truthfully, I say to him, you're the best thing that ever happened to this family. and I mean it. Like my wife kind of rolls her eyes. She's like, you love that dog more than our kids. And I laugh. But she doesn't know it's true.
Your dog
you just love the dog. The dog will love you back.
Your dog's made some guest appearances over the years on this podcast.
Yeah. When he was a puppy and we used to record when I was in Vermont, he would make an appearance on the show probably every other week, just barking at random noises that he hears or whatever. But he's mellowed out now. He's 7. So he's an old man, but yeah, man, that dogs are the absolute best. Nothing against cats. I'm not not a cat guy, but if I had to pick one, it would always be a dog.
Yeah,
but yeah, dogs are the best. All they want is to be loved. Give them a little attention. They'll love you back, and they're the best.
Yeah, they're just, so far, this dog is super loyal, is very into just, I want to hang out with you.
24 hours in.
Super, super great. Everything's great. Everything's wonderful. And man, I look like an all-star when the kids get off the bus the other day and we tell them we have a dog.
Can you picture a better Christmas present than that?
I know. And then I tried to convince them that they don't have a Christmas afterwards, and one of them cried. They didn't like that part.
Which one?
Truman. He's so young. He's like, what? This is it? But anyway, life update, big life update. But we are glad you're with us. Week 15, we're going to break down the main slate, talk about the games we want to stack. Got some interesting games. Talk about our slate breakers this week. I'm feeling pretty good about my slate breaker, and then do a little bit of Borg and Betz, including, drumroll please, a kicker prop.
I did not see that there's a kicker prop in the doc today. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, a pick 6 apparently heard some of the backlash, where are the props? And they're in there. There's actually a lot of them. I had to parse through and figure out my favorite one. But anyway, we'll talk about that. If you want to get all of our picks, we've mentioned it every single episode, but we're about to get into playoff DFS in just a hot second. And those slates are so fun because we're kind of breaking it down like we did for Thanksgiving, where you get 3 or 4 games at a time, figure out the strategy, who's going to be the most popular. So those are coming up very soon. DFSpass.com if you want all of our picks. If you want to look at the optimizer, I was messing around right before the show thinking, okay, well, what is the field going to do? That's been really helpful for me in my process this year in explaining this is why I play certain players. This is why we think this player is a great play. Like last week, if you would have played Josh Allen, you would have seen in the optimizers that basically 4 or 5% of the field was going to play him, and the dude went off for over 50 points. So DFSpass.com if you want to be a part of that.
Straight cash, homie.
We're recording this on Thursday, and there is some injury news on this slate, and I'll let you be the one to share some of that as we get to each player. But at quarterback, I'm really deciding between 2 guys, and it kind of comes down to, is Justin Herbert healthy? Are his weapons healthy? He's 5.9. And then Kyler Murray at home is 6K. They are 6-point favorites now against the Patriots, and Kyler is so stressful to click the button for because we know week to week what he is, but it's a great price.
For sure. Yeah, let's start with Kyler. I mean, 6K at home, like you talked about, against the Patriots. It's really not an imposing matchup whatsoever. The Pats are, bottom 10 and basically a lot of the advanced metrics, YPA, completion percentage allowed, stuff like that. My concern with Kyler is just, for cash, whenever you've expected him to show up, he hasn't. when you play him, he kind of disappears. So you never really know what you're going to get. That said, it kind of feels like a week where quarterback is somewhat weak for cash, I think, because, you could spend up for Hurts or Allen or Lamar or whoever you want, but like the way the dynamics shape up here for cash, I think balance builds, once again, we kind of say that every week, balance builds project best, and at 6K, that price tag is pretty good. I know at home he's played better this year. He's got McBride rolling. Marv is still a piece of the offense. He hasn't been incredible, but he's a piece of the offense. And he can always run, right? It's just that it hasn't been consistent. So I like Kyler. I prefer Justin Herbert for the $100 less if we get good news on the injury front, which, really is the key is Lab McConkey. If Lab McConkey's not out there, I have a tough time trusting Huge and Palmer and Stone Smart as the dudes to carry to carry Justin Herbert while Disley's out. But the matchup's awesome, right? The Bucs have allowed the third most pass yards per game. Obviously, you can throw on Tampa. So it's a good spot. The other thing with Herbert that's tricky is that he's dealing with a quad contusion and a mild left ankle injury, which I think he's definitely going to play. But just, are you going to get the 25 or so rushing yards that we've kind of seen from Herbert in recent weeks? That I'm not sure. So I'm having a really tough time with quarterback this week on DraftKings. Where are you at with those two guys?
I think right now I'm Kyler as of this recording because I'm just building my lineups as if, okay, there's going to be at least somebody hurt, somebody out. I'm just assuming with the Chargers. But you're right. Like Herbert's averaging 30 rushing yards per game at home. It's a pretty good matchup. The fear I have with the Cardinals is it's a James Conner game, and who's also a fine play. Like we're not going to talk about that game, but I think James Conner is going to project quite well if you want to play him. So it's kind of between two guys that are at the same exact price point. And it might be one of those things where you're going back and forth all week. You and I stress out about it, and then they end up scoring about the same points. But I think they're both solid plays at their price point. And I agree. I think most of the field will try to pay down. Those guys look really good on FanDuel. If you wanted to pay up, what if you just said, I want to play Joe Burrow because I might be playing one other Bengal in cash? Like I don't mind paying up for that just because he's been awesome.
Yeah, and the pass volume is going to be there. We'll talk about that game in more detail today, but yeah, number one in pass rate over expectation. They kind of like throw to set up the run as far as, most teams will kind of run to set up play action, stuff like that. Their first game plan is to throw. Obviously, when you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, that's going to be the game plan. So yeah, it's hard to argue with that. I mean, Burrow's just been unreal. The pass volume should be there. My only concern is like, not that since he needs it, but will they get pushed by Will Levis on the other side? I'm not so sure. But yeah, 7,300, it's an okay tag for Joe Burrow. If you didn't want to mess around with the Herbert injuries or the McConkey uncertainty or, Kyler's just up and down nature, I totally get that. I think that's definitely in play. And there is some cheap enough wide receiver options on this slate that I think you can kind of get up to Burrow and like drop down to the 5K range and feel okay about your lineup. So yeah, I think he's in play.
Yeah, I'm going to tinker around with some lineups because this range, 6K, 5.9 for Herbert. If you want to go up to Burrow, that's fine. I think that's where you're going to see a lot of lineups. On FanDuel, CJ Stroud is really cheap. We'll talk about the game. He's like in no man's land on FanDuel, which is kind of random to see. So we'll talk about that game more. I can't play him in cash. Like I could recommend him. He's going to project well at his price. And yet CJ Stroud has one game over 20 points.
That's weird, man. He was so good last year. I think the problem is just Joe Mixon's been so good. I mean, he hasn't had, Steph Diggs for part of the year and Nico, but still, like, Mixon's been great. And yeah, I don't know, man. I'd have to play around with lineups on FanDuel I haven't built yet to see how that fits. But I think for tournaments, and we'll talk about that game more, I think the stacking is in play because we don't care about what you've done recently. We care about what you're going to do maybe this week. So I'm interested in tournaments, but I agree with you. The floor is shaky on Stroud.
All right, at running back, I think you're going to see 2 or 3 guys around 6K. Like Chuba and Rico is the big talking point, I think, on this slate. They're going to be some of the most popular running backs. Do you think people will play them together? That's what we talked about on Tuesday. Chuba is 6.5. Rico is 6.1. Chuba on FanDuel is 7.5. Like, I think he's almost a lock on FanDuel. But what do you think about those two guys? Have you arrived at a different conclusion?
I think they're both incredibly strong plays. I mean, Chuba, the mild concern, and I put air quotes around concern, was just that, of the back 3 to 4 weeks of the year here to finish it out, like, could you see Jonathan Brooks more? Obviously, that equation is gone. Raheem Blackshear is their running back 3. He's dealing with a chest injury. So his, again, really big air quotes, competition for targets and touches here in the backfield is Mike Boone.
Yeah, baby.
Who's kind of a practice squad, cast off over the course of his career in the NFL. So Chuba should touch the ball 20 plus times easily. And the Carolina Panthers are favored in this game. This is the first time Carolina's been favored in a game since December of 2022. So for context on how the market is viewing this team, and maybe more importantly, the Cowboys, it's a great spot for Chuba. Obviously, you can run on the Cowboys. So I love Chuba this week. I think he's my first piece in for cash games, but I also love Rico, and I think you can play them together in the same cash lineup. When we talk about tournament upside, you think about like how a running back hits their ceiling. They're getting, their team's winning. They're controlling the ball. They're getting the goal line touches, all those things. I think in a tournament setting, I probably wouldn't play them together, but for cash, when you're just thinking about like the median expectation, both guys are so strong. The matchup is incredible.
Chuba saw 31 opportunities last week.
I think it's going to happen again, man.
Dude, they are trying to kill this man. They gave him a ton of money just so they could break him. But I think Chuba is my preferred, probably first piece I'm putting in my lineup. And then Rico, I'm not saying I have to put him in my lineup. There is routes where that, it doesn't go well for Rico. But in context, the Panthers are giving up 170 rushing yards per game. That's tied for the fourth most of the last, 10 years. So
good matchup.
I know. It's a good one. Okay, so the big injury news we're still waiting is about Bucky Irving, who did not practice on Wednesday or Thursday. And so we have Rachaad White, or as he's known on our website, Richard Dick, at 5.8. What is your thoughts
White,
on
baby.
Richard?
I mean, if Dick's alone in the backfield, he's a pretty good play. The matchup is not great on the ground against the Chargers. They're kind of middle of the pack recently in terms of like EPA, rushing success rate, that kind of thing over the last 6 weeks or so. But they've given up a lot of running back catches this year. Their defense is kind of designed to have you check the ball down. So 8th most running back catches, 8th highest target share to running backs. That's what we like to play Rachaad White for anyway. And so, yeah, I mean, when you saw Bucky leave last week, Sean Tucker barely played still. I think he had 3 carries. So I do think you'll see a little bit more Sean Tucker this week if there's no Bucky, but still, it's going to be Rachaad White as the leader. So yeah, at 5,800 on DraftKings, where the full PPR scoring really fits him, I think he's an amazing play if Bucky doesn't play.
Yeah, those 3 running backs we named, Chuba, Rico, Rachaad White, are probably going to be the most popular if Bucky is out. Chase Brown has a great tag at 7.2, and I think you need to think about your lineups this week saying, like, how do I get at least one Bengal in my cash lineup? Is it Chase Brown? Is it Jamar? Is it T? Are you stacking up with Burrow? They all look pretty good at the price point. Do you feel like with the running back value, because I think it's pretty good value here, getting a couple guys. Now, we don't have like a Charbonnet on the DK. Now, on FanDuel, play Charbonnet at 6.7. Ken Walker's out. Play him there. How do you think people are going to build? Are they going to get 3 running backs and maybe pay up for Derrick Henry? Or, how's that going to go?
Yeah, I think it is a 3 running back week. There's like 5 or 6 guys that I think on a different slate, I would even consider them in cash, but we haven't talked about them yet. It's like, obviously you could pay up for Saquon, or, Derrick Henry should literally rush for 100 yards and a touchdown without trying against the Giants in that game. So those guys are incredible, but like pricing dynamics, I think kind of funnels you into this 7.2 range and below for Chase Brown, that I'm probably going to pick 3 of this group of 4 with like Chase Brown, Chuba, Rico, and Dick White, assuming Bucky does not play. So yeah, you could spend up running back. I wouldn't fault anybody. Like, if someone showed up in a head-to-head with Derrick Henry, I'd be like, I get it. I totally get it. But as is the case every week on DraftKings, right now with the injury information we have, I think the cheapest wide receiver I'm comfortable in cash games with is Adam Thielen. And he's 5,400, right? So it's just really tough to kind of fit those top-tier running backs in cash this week.
So you're telling me in week 15, Adam Thielen is a wide receiver that you thought you'd be playing in DFS?
2 of Bryce Young's weapons are going to be the most popular plays on the slate this week. Not 1, 2 of them. We'll talk about Thielen here in a minute. Yeah, life comes at you quick, Kyle.
Yeah, there's some best ball teams like, man, I can't even remember that I drafted Thielen. I thought he was going to help me at the beginning of the year, and now he's looking good. I think Henry is going to be one of those plays that doesn't get quite the roster percentage that he's gotten in the past because of the slate. Like we always talk about slate context. If we didn't have 2 or 3 guys in the 6K range that we liked, people would be paying up for Henry, but I don't think Henry is a must. However, staring Henry in a head-to-head is a psychological thing that you need to think about. And we'll talk about that in just a second. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
When it comes to towing, seeing is believing. That's why Chevy Truck's advanced camera technology offers up to 8 available cameras for 14 unique views, so you can focus on the view that really matters. Chevrolet, together let's drive. Learn more about Chevy Trucks at Chevy.com. Safety or driver assistance features are no substitute for the driver's responsibility to operate the vehicle in a safe manner. Read the vehicle owner's manual for important feature limitations and information.
At wide receiver in cash this week, I think the Bengals are going to be guys that show up a lot, and for good reason. We'll talk about that game in a second, but Jamar Chase is not expensive enough. You heard it. Like he's priced up relative to everybody else, and yet he's too cheap for the type of upside that you're going to get. League leading receiving touchdown total. He's on pace for 20, which is just wild. And then T. Higgins had his first bust game since week 4. He's still going to project well. And I don't know, are you going back and forth between those two?
Yeah, I think it's tough to kind of pick which one you want to go with, especially when the last time we saw these guys play, Jamar Chase broke the slate right on prime time. He's chasing the Triple Crown. I think they want to get it for him. So I think you're still going to see a ton of volume for Chase. But the thing is like the offense in the pass game is just those two dudes, right? I mean, Andre Oshibas is out there doing cardio. Mike Gesicki is not involved as long as T. Higgins is healthy. So even if Chase gets his, I think there's still enough to go around for T. I don't think you'll see the discrepancy that existed this past week. Most times, the last time before that in the previous 2 games, T. Higgins had double-digit targets in back-to-back games. So I really like both guys. Obviously, you're saving almost $2,000 to drop down to T. Higgins. If I could pick one, it would be Chase, but $2,000 goes a long way on this slate. So again, it's just how you want to build. I think my lean right now is to play T if I'm going to pick one in cash and kind of go from there. But I wouldn't necessarily fault anybody for trying to prioritize Jamar Chase.
Yeah, I think I lean T when I'm factoring in price, and I think he'll be more popular because of the way that people, people build their lineups as more of a balanced build. So anyway, we like them both. Try to figure out combinations. You'll see them in our best plays. There's a bunch of other dudes, though, below T. Higgins that we like. Cortland Sutton at home, 6.6. He's been awesome, which is another wild sentence to be able to say. Like, he's been a top 10 wide receiver for really the last 2 months straight. Calvin Ridley is somebody I come back to every single week in cash because he's basically the same price. He has a good matchup. He's at home. I could give you some air yards number for the 30th week in a row. Are you thinking about Ridley, or do you just like, I hate Will Levis so much that I hate playing his options.
I know, it's so tough. And like in my cash article this week, I wrote up Ridley, I wrote up Brian Thomas Jr., and it's like, man, it feels really unsettling to trust Mac Jones and Will Levis, especially considering Will Levis, quietly like kind of banged up his shoulder last week on the last play of the first half. They tried to throw a Hail Mary, he got sacked, aggravated his right shoulder. He's practicing in full, but he's on the injury report for his right shoulder. You cannot have any room for error if you're Will Levis right now. Like, you need to be healthy to play at a high level. So I think he's a really good play at his price point, especially on FanDuel. I mean, he's basically the same price on FanDuel. That's always an insane value. Truthfully, I might have a little bit of a hedge situation going where I play him on FanDuel and I might not on DraftKings. I'm not sure yet. But the spot is incredible. Cincinnati's terrible defensively. Obviously, we've been picking on them all year. He saw 12 targets last week. And what's interesting actually about his usage last week, I don't know if you caught this, Kyle, but like his ADOT came way down. So it wasn't everything all down the field. It was actually some high percentage stuff, which if your quarterback has a shoulder issue, that might be what you want to do anyway. So yeah, I think Calvin Ridley's a rock solid play. There's paths where I see it going south. So like in a tournament, if he's going to be very popular, which I think he probably will be, I potentially would look to come in underweight that. But for cash games, I think he's rock solid.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, they're going to get pushed in that game. And let's say that Levis can't finish the game. I don't mind if it's Mason Rudolph. I really don't.
It's really not a drop off at all.
Yeah. So Ridley's interesting. Brian Thomas Jr. is another player I really like. Adam Thielen, 5.4. Do you think there will be 2 Panthers that show up a lot in cash?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
I don't think I can do it.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing with
you're going to see Thielen squeezed out for Chuba.
Yeah, I think if anybody's going to pick one or the other, it's definitely going to be Chuba. I do think Thielen's playable. I mean, he's had double-digit targets in back-to-back games. He's kind of doing what he did last year in the first half of the year before he kind of fell off, where it was just like insane PPR games from Bryce Young. Real quick, though, on their rotation, they will get Jalen Coker back in this game, most likely with the quad issue. I don't think that's affecting Thielen that much. I think if it affects anybody, it'll be David Moore, but it is worth pointing out. So, yeah, I think Thielen's fine. The tough part is, again, like, I don't know about you, I haven't really seen anybody below 5K that I'm like excited to play. So that's why Thielen's in the conversation this week. So hopefully we get more values to open up throughout the weekend. As of now, I think Thielen's the cheapest wide receiver I would feel comfortable playing in cash.
Yeah, you start dropping down. It's the Browns guys like Tillman, Elijah Moore. I mean, I get it. I'm not too excited about it. I think people will want to go to Steelers because Pickens is going to play and maybe go back to Calvin Austin. But still, like, you're conceding that you could have a 0. And if you start to play around with your lineup, and you're like, okay, well, these other people, let's say you had Jamar Chase and Calvin Austin. Sounds really great, but if you guess wrong and somebody has T and Ridley instead, like it's like a lineup's pretty much done there because you're probably going to follow Chalk at running back. So make sure you check out our best plays. I really like Amon-Ra. I think he's fine at his price point. He's more of a consolation from Chase, but he's definitely in play there. Lad McConkey, if healthy, if he gets in a full practice, he's in my cash radar.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, great spot for Lad. I do kind of think he plays actually too, because he was close last week. He's kind of battling through the shoulder. I think they just gave him a week to kind of get him ready for the stretch run here. Yeah, Lad McConkey's his targets per route run have just been off the charts as the dude for Justin Herbert. So I like him a lot if he plays. It is worth noting too, the Bucs just put another safety this past week on IR. So like kind of where Lad wins in the middle of the field should be a better matchup for him.
All right, I'll give you some cheap names real quick because Noah Brown is he on IR with his kidney?
They have not put him on IR, but they said he'll miss multiple weeks and it could be season ending. So I think they probably will soon.
I get it if you wanted to punt there with Diami Brown. I get it. He's a boom bust player though. Anyway, 3,100.
Probably more of like a tournament dart for me than cash,
okay.
But I see what you're saying.
Okay.
If you're going to play the second guy, probably it's Zach Ertz, right? I mean, 4K against the Saints.
He's Zach Ertz guy?
Oh, I've been an Ertz guy for years, dude. Philly great. Zach Ertz. Yeah, you kind of know what you're getting. Like, there's not a ton of after the catch upside. And by not a ton, I mean 0. But behind Terry, like you said, I mean, it's Diami Brown, Olamide Zaccheaus, the boys. It's a good matchup. So I think Zach Ertz is fine at 4K for cash.
Okay. Yeah. His target share has actually gone up over the last month, which is usually like same thing with Thielen. Dudes that were like, they're super old and yet they've been more involved down the stretch. At tight end, if you want to go Ertz at 4K, that's fine. The punt guys are Daniel Bellinger, who I mentioned on Tuesday, but I think people will want to play Stone Smart. And I just want to warn you that Stone Smart will be a player that a year from now you will forget exists in the NFL. Okay?
That's rude.
That is very true. Stone Smart with 2 T's at the end.
It's a pretty cool way to spell your name, I'm not going to lie. Yeah, the reason he's in play is because Will Dissly is going to miss a couple of weeks here with the shoulder injury. When Dissly left this past week's game, Smart caught all 3 of his targets for 54 yards. He was kind of involved as the pass-catching tight end for Justin Herbert. Big asterisk here. Lad McConkey did not play in that game. So, at 2,600, like, what does he have to give you? 5 points, 6 points? And you're like, okay, whatever, that's fine. Like, you'd probably be fine with that in cash, assuming the rest of your lineup does well. But I would not be shocked if he comes back down to earth as like a 2 catch for 12 yards kind of thing. So for me, I think it's pretty simple. Like, if Lad is in, I'm not that excited about Stone Smart. If Lad's out, I think Stone Smart's actually a very good play. Real quick on our roster percentage, like I'm pretty sure he's going to be about 20% this week, 25% maybe in small field, maybe up to 30. That feels like a pretty easy fade.
Oh yeah, I mean, because that it just comes down to roster construction of if somebody's playing Stone Smart, then the salary they're saving is they're paying up elsewhere, and you just have a different combination. I like punt tight ends. I've always liked punt tight ends. I do not like popular punt tight ends.
Stone Smart's just going to bury you this week, Kyle, and I'm here for it.
Maybe. I don't know. I haven't really figured out tight end. I mean, Trey McBride will score one day.
This week?
And I'll tell my kids.
Is he going to score this week?
I think this is the week. You stack him with Kyler, you're cooking.
I like it. All right, I'm here for it. What are his odds for anytime touchdown? We should look that up.
I don't know, but let's like give out that bet just for fun.
I'm down.
I'm putting it on our props. Official. Make it official.
This is the week. Should we go two touchdowns?
I tried to do that with Marv, where I was on to Marv 2 weeks ago, and I was like, I like the matchup, broke it down, had my hand in the dirt. I placed 2 bets. I placed one of anytime touchdown, and then I did another one with 2, and I got greedy. He got one.
Okay, I have his odds here. Plus 175 to score a touchdown. Touchdown odds, by the way, are usually terrible. They're not like actually reflective of the odds that really exist, but plus 175, not terrible. 2+ touchdowns, plus 1,500. I mean, why not throw a dart?
I don't mind throwing a dart. What about like what does it get to when it's McBride plus money line?
That I'm not sure, but we'll look it up.
Okay. Anyway, McBride, you'll see that in our props. I'm just going to tell you right now, we're going to take it, and I don't even care if we lose the unit.
It's fine. We're here to live, Kyle. I'm down for it.
Yep. Okay, Hunter Henry's fine on FanDuel if you want to play him there. At defense, paying up for the Ravens is tempting when you are a 16-point home favorite and you're facing Tommy DeVito. And then you shared some news today that just had me rolling. Giants practice did not go well on Thursday, people. Tell them how it went.
Oh, man. So there's certain beat reporters that are, really good at what they do, and there's certain ones that are not as good. I love Jordan Ronan, who covers the team for ESPN. He's like, he'll tell you straight up like how he feels about the team, and he's honest, and his opinions, I really like him. He put out a tweet today that said he just watched the Giants struggle badly at practice during a red zone drill in the cold and heavy winds. All 17 passes went incomplete. Weather on Sunday against the Ravens expected to be around 40 degrees, winds up to 11 miles per hour. This Giants team, man. So it's going to be Tommy DeVito. Multiple offensive line injuries. Malik Neighbors is not 100%, right? He's been banged up the last couple of weeks. I mean, they have a 13.25 implied team total. That is insane. Ravens favored by, last time I saw, 16 points. I would not be surprised if that gets up to 16.5, 17. So, yeah, it's enticing to play the Ravens defense, truthfully. $3,900 for defense?
I can't. I will not be paying that in cash.
It's one of those it's tough to stomach, but if you have the lineup that you like and it works, I wouldn't fault anybody.
Okay, so the ones that I think you're going to see in cash the most are the Cardinals at $3K. And then I think I kind of like the Eagles, man, a little bit more for just $100.
Against the Steelers?
Tell me who Russell Wilson is throwing to.
So the thing that doesn't matter about that is that I think you're going to see a very run-heavy game plan from Pittsburgh this week without George Pickens, without talent at wide receiver.
They can't. I mean, they're still going to throw the ball 45% of the time.
Yeah, so what is that, like 28 pass attempts? 27 pass attempts?
I think they're a really high floor, really good defense that's really cheap at home as a favored team against a crappy passing offense.
I don't know, man. I mean, the Eagles...
You trust the Cardinals? They are a
I trust
weird
the Cardinals.
team,
I trust the Cardinals more than I do the Eagles against Russ and Pittsburgh. Drake May is throwing a pick in 5 straight games.
It's not a debate of who's more likely to take sacks, but which defense is more talented, and the pricing should not be this big of it should be this close. That's what I'm saying.
Sure, I get that. I think for tournaments, the Eagles are a really good pivot off of the Cardinals. I would play the Cardinals in cash personally.
Gosh, man, dude, go through and watch Cardinals games because I watch them a lot.
I don't want to. It's a bad experience.
I'm telling you, dude. The fact that they're favored by 6 points scares the They haven't been favored in 3 years by this much.
It tells you a lot about this Patriots team. Dead last in pressure rate allowed are the Patriots.
Okay. I agree. The Cardinals are going to show up in my best place. I just think it's crazy that the Eagles are that close in price.
I mean, the Eagles just got shredded by Bryce Young last week.
Did they? Dude,
They
what
did.
are you? You're
They
hating
should
on
have
your
lost.
team?
They lost the game if Xavier Legette catches that
They were
ball.
on the road, dude. You don't just walk into Lincoln Financial Field. Is that what it's called?
Sure don't. You sure don't. I mean, you can't walk in there and win. No,
Sounds like
sir.
you guys have some pretty crappy fans, man.
Just being honest. Just being real.
This game is for the battle of the soul of your state.
The soul of the state.
The soul of Pennsylvania is up in the air.
Sounds like something a Southern boy would say.
Yeah, that's what we would say. All right, moving on.
Stack Attack.
Wow, I didn't know that you would be such a hater on your team, man. I didn't know that you didn't believe in them. You're scared of Russ. That was my takeaway. You're scared of Russ.
I'm scared of Russ, man. Russ is cooking, baby. I'm scared of Russ and Arthur Smith. Not really.
You know who I'm scared of? Just a little fan take right here. You know who I'm scared of?
Who?
Losing to Desmond Ridder this week.
Oh, it's either going to be Aiden O'Connell like limping around on Monday night or Desmond Ridder, and the Falcons are going to lose, and it's going to be beautiful.
You know we have the same record as last year at this point, and when Desmond Ridder was our quarterback. We were 6-7, one game behind the Buccaneers.
The NFL is so funny how like in little pockets of the season, there's like little moments that you kind of like think of this as what your team is, and like through the first like 3 weeks, I was like, this Eagles defense is horrendous. Remember that? Like when they
for sure, and for
when the
some
Falcons
reason
crushed them on Monday night in the final drive,
that should have never happened.
right? But then the Falcons, we're riding high, 6-3. We're going to the playoffs. It was Kirk Cousins as the answer. Now it's like, just move on, man. Just blow it up.
Oh man! All right, we're gonna highlight a couple different games here for Week 15. If you want to get the full breakdown, we have a Vegas report. I wrote up a pace of play article that is in the DFS Pass, and I feel like you and I, after we get done with those articles, I feel like our readers, our listeners, like get a really good picture of this is the slate. This is how we're attacking the slate. And here's some ways that you can think of stacking. So that's kind of what this is. First game we're going to talk about is Miami at Houston. I talked about this on Tuesday as a good secondary game. Houston is a 3-point home favorite. They're coming off the bye. It's a 47-point over-under. Bobby Slowick has his boys hungry. D'Amico Ryans has a really good defense this year, by the way. They're top 6 in EPA per rush and pass. And obviously they can get after the quarterback really, really well. So it's 2 on the road. 2 has been really, really good since he's returned. The passing offense has been awesome. And so on the Miami side, I'm kind of looking at this team and figuring out if I'm going to go this route, 2 is cheap enough that I can double stack him. And it's me just figuring out which of the pieces I want. So like Jonnu, I think is a really good play in this game because the way the Texans play their defense is basically cover 4, keep everybody back, get beat underneath between Achane and Jonnu. So I think both those guys are good plays. And then I'm just figuring out which wide receiver I want to stack with Tua.
Yeah, there's a couple things I have to say about how I think the game goes for Miami. First, no Azeez Al-Shaair. Remember the suspension for the Trevor Lawrence hit? So he's a pretty like side-to-side rangy linebacker. I think that bodes really well for Achane in the pass game, as well as Jonnu potentially. So I'm very interested in those 2 guys. The other thing to consider is I haven't seen an update on Thursday. We'll see what happens on Friday in practice, but there was a report from some of the beat reporters early in the week that Tua could be without both starting tackles this week, potentially. Both guys banged up at least. So make sure you're seeing what's happening with the Miami offensive line. But if you have offensive line issues against this Houston pass rush, I think Mike McDaniel's game plan better be get the ball out as quick as you can. Devon Achane, hello, in the pass game. Jonnu, Tyreek on that short, quick hitter type stuff. So I think you're going to see a lot of completions from Tua, which on DraftKings you get a lot of PPR volume. I really like that. The third thing is this run game is completely broken for the Dolphins. They cannot run. They are 31st in EPA since Tua returned to the lineup in Week 8. Only the Raiders are worse in EPA running the ball than are the Dolphins. So I'm pretty much interested in like Achane as strictly a wide receiver pretty much in this game. And I think you're going to see a ton of Tua pass attempts. So I like that angle of it. The tough part is, like you said, is like, where's the truth on the usage? Because last week it was like vintage, Dolphins usage where it's like Tyreek and Waddle are getting everything and not much for Jonnu. But throughout the course of the year, Jonnu has been very heavily involved. So I'm trying to figure out like where the ball goes. I just think if you're going to play this game, for me, the angle is through the pass game.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what you have to do against Houston. On the Texans side, I wanted to come in here and say, oh, man, I think there's a really good matchup for Tank Dell. Here's some really cool stats. They don't exist, people. They really don't.
So depressing, man.
It's really, really bad. His
5,400? That's a pretty good tag, though, on DraftKings.
Oh, don't intrigue me, man. I went through it. I wanted to make him like somebody on this slate that we talk up. His targets per out run this year against zone is 16%.
6,100 on FanDuel, also a very good tag.
Yeah, on FanDuel, I think he's actually a pretty good play.
Yeah.
If you're stacking up this game.
For sure. Large field, dart throw, I think he's in play.
Yeah. My favorite dart throw in this game is the tight ends, to be honest. It's Jonnu, who I think is set up really well. And I actually think the doctor is interesting at 3,300. So just the way the matchup works. I mean, Nico is somebody we're going to tell you to play if you're stacking up this game. He's the primary play. Mixon is expensive, and you're kind of starting to see him plod a little bit more, but they're coming off the bye. Any interest in the Texans side stacking up?
Yeah, we talked about, like, for cash games, the floor on Stroud is pretty shaky, but he's cheap. I mean, you're thinking about, like, especially on DraftKings where he is. We talked about Herbert at 5,900. We talked about Kyler at 6K for, like, kind of the cash plays. I mean, Stroud's $200 more. You just pop up there a little bit in pricing, pivot off him. You know where the ball is going. You play him with Nico. You can play him with Tank. Set up a nice double stack there. So I do have interest in tournaments. I mean, I've been playing Stroud stacks like every week in tournaments and, losing money, donating to DraftKings.com. So what's one more week, Kyle? Let's just do it.
If you wanted to get out of this game and you think, okay, I think this is a bad matchup for Tua. If you want to play Mixon in the Houston defense, that's an intriguing route to get away from this game. I don't think it's going to be super popular. I'm just looking at some of the roster percentages right now. I just think overall it's going to stay pretty tame. So it is a nice game to think that if it pops off, that could be nice. But you just worry if the Texans get a lead and they kind of cruise into neutral, then that's what you would get. So that's why I think Mixon's fine as like a wipeout pick.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm with you on that.
Okay. I'm going to take the Texans -3.
Yeah, the offensive line issues kind of worry me. I'm with you. I'll take Houston -3.
Next game is the Brian Callahan reunion game. Cincinnati at Tennessee. Think about Brian Callahan's life. He was gifted with Joe Burrow, who I've always said is the best quarterback in the league. Always been a big fan. And he was the offensive coordinator. He was there from 2019, 2023. Then he says, you know what? I'm ready for the big time. I'm going to be a head coach. This is a young, upcoming team with a quarterback. Let's go to Tennessee with Will Levis. How much does he hate his life in this game?
I think he has some regrets, as they say. What's really funny, and I mean, we all have terrible takes from July and August, right? Like, we get stuff wrong all the time. But if you remember, like, the best ball conversation was like, dude, the Titans are cheap. I know Will Levis could be bad, but what if he hits? Like, there's upside here.
You get a couple spike games, man.
I mean, they're going to throw. It could work. Yeah, Will Levis obviously is playing his last couple games in the NFL over the next month as a starter. He's not the answer. He's got a shoulder issue. I think there's good plays on the Tennessee side here. The matchup is really intriguing, but like I talked about with Ridley, I am worried about just roster percentage there on a team that could kind of dud. So my overall stance is I think you want to play into Cincy just given the pass rate and given that the stacks are so condensed. I mean, you know where the ball is going. It's Chase Brown, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, and pretty much no one else. So I like that angle. I don't even think you have to force a Tennessee bring back here if you don't want to. So that's kind of my stance.
Yeah, I mean, Ridley, we talked up earlier, but just to give you some stats about Cincy's defense, they're allowing the highest explosive pass rate since week 8. And to put that percentage, it's 21%. If you want to put that in perspective, it is tied for the highest rate any team's allowed over an 8-week stretch. So it does fit really well with what Ridley's good at. And I think he's too cheap for his ceiling. I mean, that's what it really is. You're always chasing a ceiling. That's why he's a fun play in DFS. Tony Pollard is interesting too. He popped up on the injury report, but it's kind of like he's just kind of trying to chill, make sure that he's maintaining stuff at the end of the season. So on the Titans side, if you wanted to play Ridley, if you want to play Pollard as to bring back, I'm fine with that. but it's a Burrow double stack. That's how I'm approaching this game.
Makes a lot of sense. And I do think Pollard is really intriguing, assuming his health is good here. He was on the injury report for an ankle issue. Thinking about kind of, again, just the game theory aspect of this, Chase Brown's probably going to be top 2, top 3 in roster percentage this week. You just play the running back on the other side and play the Burrow stack instead is a really good way to get leverage on Chase Brown, but then also leverage on Calvin Ridley through Tony Pollard. So I do like Tony Pollard quite a bit, just from a game theory standpoint.
All right, so I'm looking at this game, and it does profile as it could go back and forth. The Titans are scrappy, and their defense is scrappy in some ways, and then yet you still look at this team and say, can they even sustain drives? They lost to the Jaguars last week at home. It was just rough. So I just worry about the Bengals have been so good recently and so good against really good teams that they could just step on their throats this week, and you see the Titans kind of lay flat. So I feel like 5's not enough. I
agree. Anything less than 6, kind of that key number, I would play Cincy here. And you know that you come to this show for our stone cold sides and totals locks because they're so good. But I mean, the Bengals are better than their record, right? And they're still playing for something. Mathematically, they're not out of it. They want to get Jamar Chase that triple crown. Like, I'm betting on the Bengals this week. So yeah, I would lay the 5.
Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
So, you want to be a marketer. It's easy. You just have to score a ton of leads and figure out a way to turn them all into customers. Plus, manage a dozen channels, write a million blogs, and launch 100 campaigns all at once. When that's done, simply make your socials go viral and bring in record profits. No sweat. Okay, fine. It's a lot of sweat. But with HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools, launching benchmark-breaking campaigns is easier than ever. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
This episode is brought to you by NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV. There's a lot to be thankful for this season. For one, I'm thankful you can get NFL Sunday Ticket on YouTube TV right now for only $209. That's exactly what you need as we head right into the playoffs. You can invite your friends over. Maybe you have a multi-view. You could have 4 different games, one for you, one each for the 3 other friends you invite. You can change the games around. As soon as a game, the outcome becomes pretty certain, dump that game, put in another one. I've become the multi-view master. The moment the one of the games is losing steam, I'm ready to move right in and move it for another one. Build your own multi-view. One of my favorite words. Thank yourself this holiday season. Get NFL Sunday Ticket for the rest of the NFL regular season for just $209. Sign up now at youtube.com/BS. Terms and embargoes apply. Device and content restrictions apply. No cancellations.
All right, we got 2 more games we're going to break down, and then we'll get to our slate breakers and pick 6. Let's talk about Tampa Bay at Los Angeles, the Chargers. You talked about this game earlier this week as kind of a sneaky one, and we really need to wait on some injury news about Herbert, McConkey. We talked about that earlier. Stone Smart, the most popular man in the world, all of a sudden. So how are you attacking this game? Because Tampa Bay games have been ones that we talked about a lot this year, and the Chargers have been up in pass rate of, really since the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season.
For sure. Yeah, I think the Chargers side is pretty self-explanatory. Like, I don't really think you get into Gus Edwards, Kamani Vidal's, whatever. Like, they're kind of just splitting the work until J.K. Dobbins gets back, and it's super inefficient. So if you're going to play the Chargers side, you're playing it through Herbert. The problem is Stone Smart's going to be very popular, and assuming Ladd McConkey plays, it's going to be insanely popular. So if you're playing that stack, just be aware that you're not getting different, and make sure that you think about that in the rest of your lineup. But if you're going to play it, to me, that is the way to play it. Obviously, that's how the matchup would dictate it.
Yeah, this game will have some chalk. Like, if Bucky's out and if McConkey's in, then you're going to look at a very popular Rachaad White, and you're going to look at Herbert and McConkey and Smart being those guys you talked about. So I think Baker is kind of the way you flip the build, and you can still play Rachaad White with Baker. He's been really good that way. So if you want to play Baker, Rachaad White, and then one other piece, like if it's Evans or Cade Otton, like I'm fine with that. And then you bring it back with McConkey. I think that's the way you just kind of flip the build.
For sure. It makes a ton of sense. And last week, Mike Evans was mega chalk. This week, nobody's playing him. So it makes a lot of sense to go right back to him. Not the easiest matchup in the world, but his competition right now is Jalen McMillan and Cade Otton and Sterling Shepard. Like, Mike Evans at sub 10% in large field tournaments. Yes, please.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things to do with Evans, because he is, like, you go through Evans' games log throughout his entire career, he has absolute duds. And then people kind of remember what he did the week before, but in DFS, it's like, this dude could get 26 points easily on DraftKings, and you just kind of roll with that. So I like that call a lot. And, the Chargers are a team that I think are super competitive. The Buccaneers have fought all the way back to lead their division. So I do like the line a lot. I think what I would do, like if McConkey's active, like I would take the over. It's at 45.5 right now. What's
scary is when we agree on stuff is like, it's going to go absolutely wrong. But that was my first thought too, is like Tampa games, they're 8 of 13 opponents against Tampa have gone over their team total. So if you get Lab McConkey back, Herbert's healthy enough. Like I do think the Chargers are going to put up points here, and Tampa can score too. So I do kind of like the over. What could possibly go wrong?
So we are 3 for 3 right now.
They're all going to be wrong, aren't they?
Well, we got one more game here, and it is the one you've been waiting for. It's Buffalo Bills at the Detroit Lions. The over-under's at 54.5, the highest of this season. Detroit is a 2.5-point home favorite. Detroit has a lot of injuries on the defensive side. And you've kind of seen the last couple weeks, like they've skated by some of these games. I mean, the Packers game was close. The Bears game was way too close. And so it is interesting. I mean, Buffalo played their hearts out on the road last week, and then they have to go back and basically play one of the best teams in the NFL. I really think that just sets up really well for the Lions run game. We've talked about the Buffalo defense being a run funnel all year long. So it still profiles as a back and forth affair. It's just expensive if you buy into the top options. So I think what I worry about in this game, and I wrote it up, is there are paths to fail. And the way that it fails is if Detroit gets an early lead, they want to sit on it. They keep the ball away from them. And if you look at Buffalo, they have the fewest combined plays per game of any team in the NFL this year. So some of their games have actually played slower. We just only remember the last one.
Yeah, and that last one was pretty sweet. You like hot stats, Kyle. Can I give you a hot stat?
Ooh, love it.
Over Josh Allen's last 10 dome games, the Bills are averaging 32.5 points per game. They have also scored 30 plus in 7 straight games with Josh Allen playing at the MVP caliber. So I want to lean into that. And like you said, the Detroit injuries, they are going to get a couple guys back, I think, this week, but still, like, it's a major issue, and you've seen that recently. Small sample size, but over the last 2 weeks, the Lions are 21st in EPA per play defensively. Again, some injuries there. So I like the Bills again. I was shocked to log in and see some of these roster percentages. Like, there's not a ton in this game, which for the highest total on the slate, you would think that would not be the case. When we talked on Tuesday, I was like, I think everybody's going to flock to this game. I do see paths where it goes under, and so maybe you'd kind of get away from it from a game theory standpoint. But it's the opposite. Like nobody's playing it because of the roster percentage that we're seeing and some of the pricing. And it feels a lot like last week with Rams and Bills, where it was just expensive and tough to fit. But if you played it, I mean, you won a ton of money. So I'm probably going to play a lot of this game, I think.
It's that toxic optimizer talk, man. It's the optos just looking at this game. They see the prices. They see these people. They don't know Josh Allen. They don't know that he, just had one of the greatest games of all time. They don't know that he just got engaged, a week before.
Put that in your spreadsheet.
It doesn't compute. They don't know about Jimbo Cook and the way that we call him Jimbo.
Oh, Jim, I need you this week. I'm playing Mike and Jason and Dino Jr. I really need James Cook. I really need him.
I'm rooting for you. Yeah, I think it is a thing where you look at the prices and then you look at the other games, and it's easy to price this one out. And so I think there's a lot of plays if you want to go there. I mentioned Amon-Ra. I think he's a great play in this game. Last week, the thing that I brought up in the game when we highlighted is Puka and Kupp are really good plays because the way that you defeat the Bills defense is what I called the death by 1,000 paper cuts. And that's really what Puka was, right? It wasn't big plays down the field. It wasn't deep shots. It was just a bunch of stuff that kind of aggregated together. So I think that's an Amon-Ra thing. I think J-Mo is a good play as well. Although our boy Fireball Jones is going to get some love after scoring 2 touchdowns last week. My favorite plays, apart from Amon-Ra in this game, are Keon Coleman and Amari Cooper. It's like this, I didn't think I would be saying this, but I think Josh Allen, if you want to skinny stack with one of those two guys, you're basically saying those two dudes to beat Detroit in man coverage. Detroit plays man coverage more than any other team, And when you get one-on-one situations, Keon's been awesome. He leads the team in end zone targets, and even though he's missed 4 games. And then Cooper's always been a man coverage beater.
Yeah, I love Cooper this week. Really good tag on FanDuel as well. 5,900 for him. He's 5,300 on DraftKings. Both of those are really good. Saw 245 air yards last week for all my fellow spreadsheet nerds out there. Really good. And I think when you think about where the depth chart is, like you mentioned Keon Coleman, it's like, okay, how much does he even play? He's been out for a month. Dalton Kincaid's missed a month. Like, I think it's going to be Amari Cooper as an almost every down player this week in this game with Khalil Shakir doing his thing in the slot. So I like both guys. I think I would take the savings on Amari Cooper. And, considering like Adam Thielen's $100 more, I mean, I'm going to pivot off that and I'm going to play some Amari Cooper in tournaments.
All right. What's your Vegas take in this game?
The over just feels like the most obvious square play of all time. But I'm going to take the over. I did give out Bill's team total over on Tuesday, which I have played, so I'm going to take that.
Wow, because I will be taking the under.
You hate good football, man. You just love to watch these teams punt, chew up the clock. You're a hater.
I probably am. And I'm probably going to figure out ways that this game fails because I'm playing some of these players. All right, give me a quick Jameis Winston love if you want to stack this way.
Yeah, so just real quick on Jameis, I was super excited to stack him this week because we know what you're getting with Jameis, which is just YOLO ball. He'll chuck it deep. But there does look to be some weather concerns in this game. So make sure you're monitoring that, some wind, some rain. I'm not sure how bad it will be, but I just want to give people a little nudge here. Like, Casey's defense is not what it was early in the year. They're dead last in pressure rate since week 8. They are 29th in EPA per drop back in that sample. So the stacks are pretty clean with Njoku likely to sit. Like, it's Judy, it's Tillman, and Elijah Moore. Like, you kind of know where you're going with it. So if the weather is good, I like Jameis stacks, but if the weather is not good, I would probably pivot. But I think for tournaments, it's interesting.
And we didn't talk about this news, but Njoku was a DMP, and then news came out that he might not play. Like, we usually don't get that this early in the week. So does that like kind of boost some of those guys? Like, Tillman is super interesting to me at 4,900.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's cheap, right? I mean, Judy's a little expensive. He deserves it for how good he's been. But Elijah Moore is cheap. Cedric Tillman is cheap. It's a good matchup. I just wish the weather would cooperate. So we'll see.
Yeah, I'll probably dig into a little bit more because I haven't really had that game on my radar. But Chiefs on the road, they haven't covered in 7 weeks. It's I think it's a good spot. So I am with you.
Slate Breaker of the Week.
All right, I'm going to throw out my Slate Breaker. Is a guy that Betz for a long time has thought about. He's still on the fence if he's good at football. It's Amon-Ra. I mentioned him on Tuesday. He leads all pass catchers in the NFL in fantasy points per route run out wide, where he's basically been 50-50 this year. Slot, out wide. And this matchup against the Bills should not intimidate you. They've allowed the 3rd most fantasy points per game to slot wide receivers. And like Puka was last week, I think Amon-Ra is the key cog for this offense. If this is a back and forth affair, like, it's not shocking to see him put up 10 plus receptions, 100 plus yards, and he's their red zone weapon. So I think he's just an awesome play this week.
Love it. Yeah, I kind of had a down game in primetime last week. Makes sense to go right back to him in this spot. I'm going to go with the running back for my Slate Breaker. Got Rico at 6,100. Chase Brown's popular. Everyone wants to play Chuba. Nobody wants Brian Robinson Jr. without Austin Eckler at 6,200 on DraftKings, 7,300 on FanDuel. B-Rob. No Noah Brown, no Austin Eckler. Like, it's a great spot. I think you could see a little bump in the pass game as well for Brian Robinson. This team should score a ton of points against the Saints, who are playing Spencer Rattler or Jake Haener. So give me Brian Robinson Jr., who I am seeing at currently under 10% in our roster percentage report.
Yeah, we didn't even mention him at all. And I think he's a really good spot. I mean, they're 7.5 point favorites. The last time that the Commanders were this big of a favorite, just for a hot stat, on the road, November 5th, 2000. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. It was in Arizona and they lost the game. So like the Ballers were in high school the last time the Commanders were this big of a road favorite.
Tells you all you need to know about the Saints.
All right. Moving on.
It's time for Borg versus Betz, presented by DraftKings.
You don't have a sports book? No problem. You can play DraftKings Pick 6. And one of the things I just want to highlight is one of the props that I was looking at on some other sports books, it's like minus 130, minus 145. And I'm not having to deal with that. So I'm not having to pay any of this juice on DraftKings Pick 6. So it's nice to find those discrepancies, and I'm getting to play some of those today. So last week we were 2-2. We split. Gino was our guy. And I'm going to be taking Gino again. Less than 1.5 passing touchdowns. I did it last week, and guess what? He's been under this line in 11 of 13 starts. I feel like it's a line that I would just not throw out as a book.
Yeah, I mean, at some point he's throwing 2.
Yeah,
I don't know when, but he's been under so often, so it makes sense. Yeah, you played it last week. Might as well go back to the well. For the official play for the podcast and for scoring, I will say DeAndre Swift on Monday night, less than 69.5 rush plus receiving. If you find it on Pick 6, I prefer the rushing. We took that as an official play in the DFS pass. The Minnesota rush D has been dominant. Chicago is 6.5-point road dogs here. DeAndre Swift under this line of his rushing, which on books was 53.5 rush yards. He was under that in 5 of 6 road games this year. So I like the less on Swift. I will give out rush plus receiving for this, but if you can find the rushing, I prefer that.
All right, I'm going to give one that I had to do some digging. But Kenneth Gainwell, backup
Kenny
running
G.
back for the Eagles, I'm going to take more than 10.5 rushing yards since the Week 5 bye. He's had 3 or more carries in 8 games, and when he's had 3 or more carries, he's gone over this line in 7 of them. So 7 of 8. The one he didn't do it, he got 5 carries and he had 9 yards. So basically, he's been 9+ rushing yards or 10+ rushing yards in almost every single game. This line is too low, and he's getting enough where he's getting to mix in. I mean, we're not talking about Saquon getting hurt here, but the Eagles are favored. It's at home, and once again, it is the battle for the soul of Pennsylvania.
Okay, I like it. Go Kenny G. Devon Achane, less than 48.5 rushing yards. It kind of stinks because like last year, you think about Achane, he's just ripping off 50-yard runs every game. He's been under this in 8 of 13 games this season, including 4 of his last 5. The Miami offense just cannot run the football right now. Terrible matchup against Houston. You got offensive line injuries, so I will take less than 48.5 rush yards for Devon Achane.
All right, here's your kicker prop. He's been so bad recently that imagine somebody taking this prop and going like, oh man, this is the best kicker in the league. Of course I'm taking it. Now people are scared. So I'm telling you, scared money don't make money. Justin Tucker over 7.5 kicking points. It's minus 130 on most books. And just to let you know, they're 16-point road favorites. This has happened 6 other times in the last 32 years. Those teams that were favored by 16+ points, they averaged 36 points scored. So if I told you that the Ravens are going to score 30+ points, which their team implied total is suggesting, you would want to be behind their kicker. So over 7.5 kicking points for the GOAT, Justin Tucker.
I mean, the Ravens might score. Sorry to interrupt you. The Ravens might score 8 touchdowns in this game, so maybe it's just all extra points.
That would be great, but it wouldn't shock us to see him, get 1 or 2.
For sure.
That's what his line's at is 2 field goals. So that was Borg versus Betz presented by DraftKings Pick 6. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use the code BALLERS.
Ballers.
That's code BALLERS for the new customers to play $5 and get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Bets. To everyone have a good weekend.
I would love it if everybody had a great weekend. Yeah, man, good slate on tap this weekend. Hopefully everybody enjoys all the football. Win your props. Win your DFS contests. Win all the money this weekend. And when you do, tag us. Let us know how it goes. We'll be back next week to recap it all and preview Week 16. We'll see you on Tuesday. Have a great weekend.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits expire in 6 months. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.